Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to thank the gentleman from Arizona for that outstanding transition that he made here. And I actually came down to chide him just a little bit. I was listening very closely to what he had to say, and it was very valuable, the comments on energy that we need and the direction this economy needs to go. I'm going to restrain the chiding that I came because of his outstanding transition that he made, and let you know, Mr. Speaker, that I came down here to address you and to talk with you a little bit about the things that are ahead for us in this Congress, the things that are ahead for us in this country. And, you know, when our founding fathers shaped this country and filed wrote our Declaration and filed our Constitution and got it ratified, was an extraordinary accomplishment. And those documents will live for the duration of civilization. And they'll be in our memory, they'll be in our heads, they'll be in our hearts for the full duration of the time of civilization. Whether it's succeeding civilizations thousands of years from now, they'll look back on what happened here. And when our founding fathers put together this Republican form of government, which is guaranteed to us in Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution, it also guaranteed protection from invasion. But they set up the House of Representatives to have elections every 2 years so that we could be the quick reaction shock force. When the public could see that this country was going the wrong direction, they wanted to make sure that the House could be restored and filled with people that came from all across the country, the 13 original states then, or the 50 states that we are now, and the territories that send representatives here. And then we could reverse an erroneous course that could be taken by a Congress going the wrong direction. They set up that's the reason for 2 years, elections every 2 years. The Senate was set up with elections every 6 years, so they didn't have to worry about re-election for a longer period of time, and they could take the longer view. Now, that was a theory or a philosophy that was generally untested, at least within the culture and the civilization of the time. And it's proven to be a fairly effective approach. But we saw what happened here in 2010 when I'll say an over-exuberant, very liberal Democrat majority in the House and in the Senate, essentially a veto-proof majority in the Senate, by hook, crook, and legislative shenanigan, crammed Obamacare down the throats of the American people. And I remember those dramatic times. Tens of thousands of Americans came to Washington, D.C. from every single state, including Hawaii and Alaska, to protest what was happening to our God-given liberty and our right, our God-given right to manage our health, our skin, and everything inside it. Well, it was still crammed down the throats of the American people, that policy called Obamacare, and the real name for it is the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. The Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. I know. If I would say that about 6 times and you're having trouble going to sleep, Mr. Speaker, that would put you to sleep. It is a substitute for Ambien to say a Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act. Democrats finally recognized that, and they changed the name in their verbiage that they used. They said, oh, it's offensive to say Obamacare. And then they realized that the president is the one that coined the term Obamacare. He did so on February 25th of 2009 at the Blair House in that big square seating when they had a conference on health care, and he acted like a professor and interrupted Republicans 72 times that day. But he used the phrase Obamacare, and now when we used it, they said that's pejorative. Don't use that because it identifies what it really is. It's a health care system that's socialized medicine. It's a government takeover of our bodies, our skin, and everything inside it. And yet when the president used Obamacare, then some of the Democrats decided we'll embrace the word Obamacare. And they did for a while, and they realized that they were adding fuel to the fire of the rejection of Obamacare. And they decided, well, let's find another way we can name this thing. So then they insisted that you weren't nice and you weren't polite and it was inappropriate if we didn't use its official name, which they would like to have changed to the Affordable Care Act, not the Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act, but the Affordable Care Act. Now, I get to this because I'm thinking about our founding fathers and George Washington, who could not tell a lie. So I asked myself the question, this policy that's going to cost over $1 trillion extra for Obamacare, that was promised that was going to cut our premiums per household by $2,500 a year, and if you like your doctor, you could keep your doctor. If you like your policy, you get to keep your policy. Those promises weren't true. The big promises of Obamacare weren't true, and many things that were not advertised is that didn't come true either. And so now they want to say Affordable Care Act. George Washington could not utter those words, Mr. Speaker, because George Washington could not tell a lie. That's why he confessed to chopping down the cherry tree. And I'm not certain that the stump exists out there at Mount Vernon yet, but I'm convinced that George Washington couldn't say the term Affordable Care Act in reference to Obamacare, because it's not an accurate term. It's a dishonest term. It's not affordable, and it's less care. Maybe it is an act, Mr. Speaker. So that's my commentary on going down that path with our founding fathers. But they also had this vision, and they hoped that, and they had a long-term vision. It was a wonderful long-term vision of what kind of a country you could build if you just laid down God-given liberties, timeless principles, and laid out the pillars of American exceptionalism, articulate them, sell them to the American people, get them to support your Declaration of Independence, get them committed to doing what they knew they had to do, fight a war against King George. And they had to go through the winter at Valley Forge, and they had to march up and down the coastline and in the interior part of the United States, at least the 13 colonies, and take on the Redcoats wherever they were. And won that Revolutionary War, learned some lessons from that about how you field a Continental Army. You have to have a commander-in-chief, and you have to have a centralized government if you're going to defend yourself against the global powers of the world. They set up a constitution to do that. And they envisioned and anticipated a lot of things in this Constitution. One of them was a means to amend it. And they believed that the President of the United States would be a man of honor who would give his oath of office. And they wrote his oath of office into the Constitution to ensure that the nobility, the integrity, the statesmanship, the character that was part of the culture at the time would flow forth forever, or as long as the United States might exist, through our presidents. And I noted the 210th anniversary of the duel that took place between three-time Vice President Aaron Burr and the Secretary of the Treasury, Alexander Hamilton. It was just last week, about a week ago. And they met on an island and they shot it out. They fought to the death. It turned out to be the death of Alexander Hamilton because Hamilton had insulted the integrity of Aaron Burr. And Aaron Burr would defend his integrity, and Alexander Hamilton would not retract his allegations, so the two of them met in a duel. Think of that their word was so important, their integrity was so important, that the two of them faced each other with dueling pistols, knowing that one of them was likely to die in that duel, all over their word. And they had already by then written into the Constitution the oath for the President of the United States and ratified. I do solemnly swear to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. Later on added, and to protect against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and later on added, so help me God. And in the Constitution is, they call the Take Care Clause in the Constitution, and the President shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed. It's not actually the oath, but it is a component of the oath. I don't want to say the word implied. It's specific in the Constitution that the President shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed, Mr. Speaker. And so we had men of honor, statesmen, men of dignity, men of an attitude that their word and their integrity was more important to them than their very life itself. And when the oath for the President to take into the Constitution, and when they wrote in the Constitution that the President shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed, they never imagined that we would have a president who didn't have that same sense, didn't have that same sense of nobility, that sense of integrity, that sense of statesmanship. They never imagined that we'd have a president that didn't think his word was worth more than his life itself. And we come to this place in time in history, Mr. Speaker, and Alexander Hamilton went to his grave over a principle like that, and Aaron Burr lost his political career because he sent Alexander Hamilton to his grave over that principle of your word is your bond. And when you get to a challenge like that, your word is more important than your life itself. Now we're at a place where a president gives his oath of office to take care that the laws be faithfully executed, and instead simply executes the law itself, wipes it out, ignores it. Immigration law in particular, Mr. Speaker, where the president with his deferred action for childhood arrivals, with his DACA program, DACA, which really stands for Deferred Action for Criminal Aliens, that policy, and a number of other policies where the president has announced that he's going to ignore the law, and he constantly hides behind this phrase, prosecutorial discretion. It says he has prosecutorial discretion to decide not to enforce the law against people that are breaking it. Now, he has a prosecutorial discretion, Mr. Speaker, but it's on an individual basis only. And his lawyers knew that. That's why when they wrote the DACA memos, we call them the Morton memos, when they were written, and we had Janet Napolitano, then the Secretary of Homeland Security, testifying before the Judiciary Committee, and I announced to her, if you go forward with this, you will be in court and you will be sued. Because the President of the United States' job is to stick with his Article 2 authority, and that's to take the laws be faithfully executed. He is the Commander-in-Chief of our armed forces, and he is to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. This is a limited government, but all legislative powers belong here in this Congress. That's Article 1, all legislative powers. The President doesn't get to write the laws. He is compelled to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. That's his constitutional obligation. And instead, the President has said, well, I don't like these immigration laws. If the law requires our immigration enforcement authorities, ICE, Immigration and Customs Enforcement, when they encounter someone who's unlawfully present in the United States, the law requires that they place them into removal proceedings. That's the law. The President has issued an order that says to ICE, thou shalt break that law and never apply the law to remove people from the United States who are here unlawfully unless they have committed a felony or 3 mysterious misdemeanors that are vaguely identified, and I don't know that they actually have ever executed that particular provision, although I'd say it's likely that they have, Mr. Speaker, in all fairness. And so the President has created 4 different classes of people with his Morton memos and his DACA language. And by grouping people into classes of people, he's got a number of those who's exempted from the law, some number approaching 600,000 people who came into the United States or were in the United States illegally, who are exempted from the very application of the law that requires our law enforcement officers, particularly ICE, to place them into removal proceedings. That's what the President has done. So he sent the message out as far back as 3 years ago, in midsummer, and actually June, sent the message out to everybody in the world, if you can get into America and you don't commit a felony, and that's a little bit of a shorthand for the technicalities, then you get to stay. And he's acted upon that. He's executed that all right. He's executed his executive edict, but he hasn't taken care that the law itself be faithfully executed. He's defied the law. He's defied the law, and his oath is to uphold the law, to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. Now, I have to put into the list the pillars of American exceptionalism, so we're thinking about it, Mr. Speaker. What makes America the unchallenged greatest nation in the world? And it is the composition of the pillars of American exceptionalism, and you find most of them in the Bill of Rights: freedom of speech, religion, and assembly, and the right to keep and bear arms, and no double jeopardy, the property rights in the Fifth Amendment. You get to face a jury of your peers, quick and speedy trial. And the Ninth and Tenth Amendments devolve the powers not granted specifically in the enumeration in the Constitution to the federal government, devolve to the states or respectively to the people. Those are many of the pillars of American exceptionalism, but there are others. We have a free enterprise economy. The ability to invest capital and sweat equity and buy, sell, trade, make gain, and get rich if you can. And we like to cheer you when you do because it helps all of us when that happens. Free enterprise economy is another pillar of American exceptionalism, along with the root of this culture and civilization being in Judeo-Christianity, the work ethic that came from it, the value system that allowed that work to be prosperous and profitable and trustworthy so that we could do business with people in a way that we didn't have to always be checking up on them because we knew that God's looking over our shoulder. That's the shorthand for one of the reasons why this is such a great country. Another one would be, Mr. Speaker, when the Statue of Liberty went up, the image and the inspiration of that statue said to the world that if you can come here to America legally, you can achieve all that you're capable of achieving. All of the things that you might imagine that you're capable of achieving anywhere in the world, you can achieve in America because you have all of these other rights. And these rights aren't rights that government confers upon you. As in every other country in the world, government confers any rights you might have. These are God-given rights. And God has given them to us, and our founding fathers articulated that and put that down on the parchment, and we have fought and defended it all of these years. So if our rights came from government, government could take them away. The reason that they can't take them away is because they're God-given. And the inspiration that comes from all of these pillars of American exceptionalism that sends that message, beams it across the world in National Geographic magazines that show up everywhere around the world, or encyclopedias, or through cyberspace today, that picture of the Statue of Liberty, of the Washington Monument, of the Lincoln Memorial, the United States Capitol, the White House itself, American success across the world and all the places where it's been. This record of achievement, this record of sacrifice of Americans to expand the nobility of the human race everywhere around the world has inspired in every country. And the people that came here, Mr. Speaker, were inspired by that image and those ideas and those ideals. And so we didn't just get a random selection of people that came to America legally. We got the cream of the crop. We got the vigor of the planet. If there were 10 siblings in a family and only one of them had enough inspiration to find a way to come legally to the United States of America, we got the super achiever. We got the can-do. We got the cream of the crop. We got the vigor of the planet from every donor nation on the planet to come to America because they were attracted to the God-given liberty that's established here. And they came here and they achieved, and they embraced those principles, and America embraced them. And each generation from that, we taught our children the same thing. And so it's descended down through the generation. It's brought in more, and America has gotten stronger. But we're not a stronger nation if we erode those pillars of American exceptionalism. We're not a stronger nation if we lose faith with those things that have been the core of the success of this country. And we can't be sacrificing the pillars of American exceptionalism for the sake of having our hearts overrule our heads. Our founding fathers didn't let that happen. The principles that came through from the work that they did, the God-given rights and liberties that are there, they're timeless. And they index into human nature, all human nature. But they're embodied here. And by the way, one of the other things I left out of that, another reason for American exceptionalism is that all of that settlement arrived here, a lot of it, it arrived here on a continent with, at the time at least, unlimited natural resources. And at the dawn of the Industrial Revolution, and we settled this continent from sea to shining sea. And here we are today, Mr. Speaker, with a president who wouldn't agree with what I've just said. I mean, if he had the time or took the time, he would seek to rebut the principles that I've laid out. And he would say instead, well, let's see, we really don't need to have borders in America. We don't have to have that. This country, there's no reason for America to be as successful as we are. We're using a disproportionate share of the planet's resources. We're pumping CO2 into our atmosphere. That's turning the Earth's thermostat up, even though for 17 years there's not any evidence of that happening. And we have watched as he has diminished America. He's diminished it in foreign policy. He's diminished it economically. He's just diminished it socially and culturally. And today we're watching as he has established this policy of amnesty. He's pushing hard for the Senate Gang of 8 bill. The Senate Gang of 8 bill it's a matter of record, Mr. Speaker. It is instantaneous amnesty for the people that are here illegally, whether they overstayed their visas 40% or whether they came across the border illegally 60%. Or it's instantaneous amnesty for them. For anybody that would come into America in the future, it's silent, which means it is an unspoken promise that if you can get here, we haven't demonstrated the will to enforce the law if you came here. So if you come here, why would anybody think that we would enforce a law on anybody that would come here after a Senate Gang of 8 bill might potentially become law? And to add insult to injury, they sent an invitation out to the people that have been sent home to their home country, and it's the, well, we really didn't mean it clause is what I call it. And that means that Anybody that's been deported in the past, it sends an invitation that says, reapply. We really didn't mean it. That's how bad this is. And this gaping hole we have in our border in the McAllen sector and the Texas border, where we now have 57,000 unaccompanied children have come into the United States, many of them hustled across 2,500 miles or more from El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala, through Mexico, and there's a significant number yet from Mexico, coming into the United States. These unaccompanied minors that are hauled up here by coyotes who may live in those communities and recruit these kids. All of this going on. And a president who says, I need $3.7 billion to expand the bureaucracy to maybe buy a hotel to put them in and move them across the country and infuse them into our communities. Unlawful people that are unlawfully present in the United States who simply say, I am an unaccompanied minor, and I've been promised that if I could get into America, I get to stay in America. 57,000, Mr. Speaker. And what percentage of the unaccompanied minors have been sent back to their home country? 0.1%. 1/10 of 1%. And they sent Joe Biden down to Guatemala, and he landed in Panama and then Guatemala, and he went down there to send a message, which is, we're going to send your kids back, don't send them here. Well, if there's no record of that, then it isn't. They know it's not happening. So think of the difference. If we would take a military airplane and put a couple of hundred Guatemalans on it, for example, unaccompanied minors, send that plane down the runway and up into the air. If the president picks up the phone and calls the president of Guatemala and says, be on the tarmac in 2 hours, you're going to have 200 of your kids that are going to arrive there, and you should greet them. That's what a leader does. Send them back. If you do that, and do that, and do that, eventually they stop coming because they will know they're actually coming back, and they'll know that the money is wasted. It's not happening. But this president is not going to secure this border, Mr. Speaker. He's demonstrated that. We've got 2.5 more years of this president. And whatever we do in this Congress, we can't make him secure the border. We can't make him do it. The Congress doesn't have the authority to do that. There's only 2 constitutional provisions that can force the president to do anything, and we've tried them both within the last 15 years or so. And neither one of them are proven to be effective. Public opinion might push back hard enough. Well, they kind of are. But we cannot allow our border, especially right now the Texas border, to be under invasion in the fashion that it is by the tens of thousands of unaccompanied minors, which are, by the way, only 20% of the illegals coming in that sector. And they're only stopping maybe at best 25% of those that are trying to come across. So we've got a number that's up there over 1 million people that are attempting to cross into the United States, and 57,000 of those that we pick up on that are unaccompanied minor kids. The president will not secure the border. We should come to that conclusion. We've got 2.5 years of borders, or we find a way to secure it, maybe even against the will of the President of the United States, because I don't know if he's got the will to block it if we do this. But who has the authority? I look around the whole country, and the person that has the authority to do so are the governors of the border states. I have a resolution, Mr. Speaker, that I'd like to introduce into the record that says so. It calls upon the border governors to introduce or to call out their National Guard and secure the border, and says this House of Representatives will support the funding to do so. I call for that, Mr. Speaker, and urge that we pick this up, sign it. I'm going to introduce it tomorrow, and I'd like to take it up real soon and send that resolution to the world. And I would appreciate your indulgence and yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman.